All right, so I want to welcome everyone to the May 25th, 2017 meeting of the Maury County Board of Education. Technically, we do not have enough members to have a quorum yet. I'm sure a lot of them are still working on trying to find parking places, and so they're probably trying to come in. But we've got a lot of awards and recognitions tonight, and I think we can go ahead and start doing some of that right now. So we do have some members here, and then once we get some more members, we'll be able to do some business. So let's see, we can't do the roll call. I think we could go ahead as a meeting. We could go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Who's doing the pledge? We are. Okay. So we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then if everyone will remain standing for a moment of silence after the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. All right, so going through our proposed agenda, we do have in our section where we have a reminder of our mission. So that's what's guiding us here today as when we get ready to start doing some business. And we also have a section on our planning horizons just to kind of keep us on task of some of the things that we've got to get accomplished this year. Of course, I think as far as budgets, we can maybe do a check in quotation marks. We did pass a budget, but we've got part of the budget still being considered by the county commission. We may have to take another look at our general purpose budget, so that may be going to have some more work on that. But then also we have the, as far as the planning, we have the start of the school year that's coming up in just 2 months. So not very far away, and pretty soon, probably this summer, we'll start planning on getting ready for the start of the 18-19 school year, believe it or not. One other, as far as kind of a horizon, as I've informed the board on Sunday, unfortunately with my occupation, I'm just so busy that I don't have enough minutes in the day to kind of keep up, and so I'll be stepping down as the chair. This will actually be my last meeting. But the great thing is you all are getting an upgrade. So our vice chair will be stepping up into that role, taking over at our next meeting. So I know he'll do a great job. All right, so we're going to skip adopting the agenda. We're going to go ahead. Let's see, do we have? Still don't have a quorum. All right, so we're going to skip adopting the agenda. We'll go ahead and move on to recognitions and announcements. And it looks like the first thing we have up, we have some very smart students that looks like won a Knowledge Bowl. And so we're going to get some information on that from Ms. Massey.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Dudley.
I'd just like to make an announcement that throughout the evening, as some of my other board members may stand up and recognize some of the others in the public, I won't be standing because I've got some back issues, so it is not out of disrespect, but due to my back issues, I'm going to stay seated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dudley. Ms. Massey.
All right. Good evening, members of the board. Tonight, I want to recognize Knowledge Bowl winners, our 4th and 5th grade participants. So 4th grade, for our first place, we had Baker Elementary. So if Baker will come up. I'll let you announce your name. You can announce your name. Here you go. Say your name.
Hi, I'm Noah. I'm Luke. I'm Scarlett.
All right. We don't have everyone here. We have a team. Each team is comprised of 6 members, so we don't have everyone here. But they won our first place for 4th grade, so we are so proud of them. So way to go, 4th grade. Their team sponsor, I do believe, is, that's what I thought, Officer Shepherd. So he was the one that came with them and challenged them and motivated them and worked with them. So give a congratulations to him, too. And our first place winners for 5th grade is Whitthorne Middle School. Whitthorne. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jazaria. I'm Ella. I'm Jenna. I'm Peyton.
I'm Vasilios Himoglu, and Krish V. Patel could not make it today because he is currently in India.
Thank you. And here's one of our sponsors.
I'm Vicki McDuffie.
So if we'll give them a round of applause. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Ms. Massey, and certainly congratulations to all of the Knowledge Bow participants. That's a really cool activity, and special congratulations to Baker for winning the elementary or the 4th grade level, and also Whitthorne Middle School winning the middle school. So certainly this is something we probably don't want to engage in the game, "Are you smarter than a 4th grader?" They probably would beat us pretty bad right now, so we'll stay away from that.
The next one on the agenda, HOBY, they couldn't make it. So 3B, the HOBY leadership, HUS is not here.
Okay. All right, moving on. I've just got looks like there's a little bit of an edit on the agenda. We're moving on to number 3C, the U.S. News and recognition of best high schools. Looks like we got a presentation or announcement by Miss Kathy.
So Miss Kathy's coming up to the mic, but just to kind of preface everybody, just to let you know, every year, the U.S. News and World Report ranks schools and school systems as the best in America, and they rank them according to 3 levels: bronze, silver, and gold. And Miss Kathy will come up and talk a little bit about Hampshire School, but for the 2nd time in a row, Hampshire Unit School has won a bronze ribbon from U.S. News and World Report as being one of the best high schools in America.
Thank you. First thing, please excuse the way I'm dressed. I have been moving classrooms all day long. We're excited to win this award again this year. We have worked hard at Hampshire, and it is showing. And so again this year we were blessed to be a bronze winner.
All right, running back up here so we can get through the agenda. Next item up, looks like we have some recognitions for retirement and also making tenure. So it looks like that's going to be presented by Dr. Hargrove.
The first are those that have reached the milestone in their careers known as tenure, and the second are those that have reached a chapter in their life known as retirement. First, I want to recognize those who have gained tenure, and I want to tell you kind of what that means to gain tenure. In order to have tenure, you have to have completed at least 5 years of service, and also overall evaluation scores of 4 and 5 for 2 consecutive years. So the names that you're going to hear tonight, those folks have put in an extraordinary amount of hard work to teach their students and earn their tenure. Excuse me. We always do this at allergy season, and every time I do this, I'm sneezing and coughing. But on behalf of the Maury County Board of Education, as well as on behalf of the Maury County Central Office, I would like to congratulate those who are receiving tenure tonight, and also wish you continued success in your career with Maury County Schools. So we'll call your name, if you'll come to the front, please. From Central High School, Christina Caminiti. Diana Davis. Renee Gary. Kate Sneed. From E.A. Cox Middle School, Stephen Richardson. Culleoka Unit School, Lindsay Weaver. Hampshire Unit School, Josh Bracamontes. Wissy Gerald. Mary Singer. Highland Park Elementary, Mindy Medford. Alyssa Moat. From Horace O. Porter, Angela Ho. McDowell Elementary, Lauren Hyde. Nicole Stimmel. Mount Pleasant Elementary, Lucinda Tomlin. Rachel Carter. Linda Clark. Mount Pleasant Middle, Molly Anderson. Riverside Elementary, Tracy Dean. Olivia Smith. Santa Fe Unit School, Blaine Keysayer. Lori Isabel. Spring Hill Elementary, Deborah Hargrove. Emily Ferguson. April Sakowitz. Amy Sumners. Spring Hill Middle, Amy Velaz. Sheila Anderson. Donald Chambers. Spring Hill High School, Maria Worley. Whitthorne Middle School, Mark Whitten. Woodard Elementary, Leanne Zimmerman. And Wright Elementary, Lori Borman. I give to you the teachers for the 2016-17 school year who have gained tenure. You all will go that way to the back door. Kim's going to wave at you and go outside to take your picture. Congratulations. Now to honor our second group of employees here tonight, our 2016-17 retirees. This group's total service together is 1,222 years. Now, over the years of your tenure with Murray County, there's been a lot of changes. Fashion has changed. Skirts have been short, skirts have been long, skirts have been short again. Underwear has become outerwear, hair has come and gone. It's also been bleached, cropped, technicolor, curled, straightened, extended, and dreadlocked. But despite the altering appearance of your students, one thing has always remained constant, and that's your dedication to reach beyond that outer image and pull into the hearts of your students, show them who they could be. We are going to look back on your career tonight with the greatest of gratitude. You entered a profession dedicated to assisting young people achieve their highest potential. As you leave it, make sure that you keep those memories of your students, your coworkers, and your peers fondly. Memories of all the lives that you have in some way touched. Memories of you shaping the minds of our future. Speaking of future, as you embark on this chapter of life known as retirement, travel to places you've always wanted to go. Read books that are on your I gotta read that list. Do some gardening, learn some new skills, play with your grandchildren. But last but not least, don't forget the most important words, 120-day contract. I know what that means. Teachers are the reason why ordinary students dream and do extraordinary things. You may be leaving the corridors of your school building, but you will forever remain in the hearts of the students as you have taught and mentored. You're truly retiring from the most significant job in existence. Every job comes with a pension fund, but very few occupations retire with the respect and love of their many students. Retirement for you means giving up a job, but not giving up being an educator. I hope that you never stop imparting that wisdom that you have taught so many others and make this world better for us all. So on behalf of the Murray County Board of Education, on behalf of Murray County Central Office, tonight we say goodbye, but more than farewell, we would just like to say thank you. Rhonda Alexander, 19 years of service. Ellen Baldwin, 6 years of service. Jean Ball, 21 years. Nita Bernard, 25 years. Linda Brewer, 40 years. Deborah Brown, 25 years. Kathy Gurick, 17 years. Melanie Burke, 34 years. Linda Carpenter, 32 years. Cynthia Krieger, 20 years. Charlotte Calvett, 11 years. Connie Dial, 19 years. Jacqueline Frost, 12 years. Deborah Deacon, 31 years. Deborah Gross, 42 years. Brenda Hannon, 35 years. Leslie Hickman, 36 years. Karen Hyde, 16 years. Alice Holbert, 35 years. Dina Jaggers, 22 years. Vanita Jernigan, 40 years. Ronald Johnson, 25 years. Martha Jones, 40 years. Kathy Kennedy, 25 years. Deborah Kendig, 24 years. Karen Kennard, 35 years. Deborah Kirk, 14 years. Patricia Luther, 24 years. Susan Manchester, 19 years. Tom Anna McLean, 14 years. Kimberly McFall, 4 years. Sharon Mitchell, 32 years. Pam Phillips, 30 years. Teresa Pruitt, 10 years of service. Lawrence Rhodes, 29 years. Bonnie Rogers, 34 years. Novella Rogers, 40 years. Judy Runyons, 13 years. Jesse Smith, 27 years. Randall Smith, 26 years. Sheila Smith, 44 years. Enoch Thweep, 15 years. Linda Watts, 31 years. Tina Weatherford, 35 years. Deborah Williams. Just 2 years with Murray County, but we need a total of 31 years. I present to you all the 16-17 graduates, retirees of Murray County
All right, certainly congratulations to all the teachers who have reached tenure. We know that you all put in a lot of hard work, so congratulations on that. And certainly congratulations to all of our retirees. I know you all are going to enjoy life after retirement, but we appreciate all the service that you did for our schools prior to that point. So moving on, now looks like we have some recognitions or some announcements to be made, and Dr. Marzak, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So one of the things I want to do tonight is I want to recognize a community member who has been a huge supporter of the public school system, and that person is Monty Sneed with Caledonian Financial. When I first got here and started the Snow Murray contest, basically what Snow Murray is when we know we're getting close to canceling schools, instead of kids getting on social media and being mean, we said, why don't we try something different where they'd be nice? And so the idea was, let's create a contest where kids beg to get out of school versus threatening us to get out of school. So we created what was called the Snow Murray contest. So what happens is when we know we're getting close, kids create memes, which are funny videos or funny things. And then the next day, we already got some kids in the back laughing. And then the next day, the top 4 are entered into a contest. And what Mr. Monty Sneed has done is the winner of each of those contests gets a $100 gift card to a downtown Columbia business. Not only that, as we've reached out for other things and other prizes that we need, Mr. Sneed is always willing to donate to the school system, both financially financially to help us out and to do the things that we need to do. So tonight, we want to recognize Mr. Monty Sneed as a partner with Murray County Public Schools on this day, May 25th, 2017. Mr. Sneed, if you'd come on down, please. It's even leather bound. Congratulations. Thank you. Appreciate it. You want to say anything? No, he doesn't want to say anything. He's a humble man. But we do have tonight, I believe, is Nick Maldonado in the crowd? Is Nick here? Where's Nick? Nick, come on down. So we ran a contest. One of the things that we were doing with Snow Murray is we really didn't have a logo to go along with it. So I launched a student contest. Nick was selected as the runner-up to that contest. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be using one of his Snow Murray logos. He actually submitted 2. He didn't realize it. But the second one he submitted is he took the Hollywood sign and created the word Snow Murray instead of Hollywood. And so that's become one of our logos. So tonight I'm proud to present Nick with $25 for coming in second place for the contest. So congratulations, Nick. You want to say anything? No? Nick wants to pass too. So congratulations to Monty Sneed and also Nick Maldonado. Congratulations.
All right, certainly thank you to Mr. Sneed, and also congratulations to our Snow Murray contest winner. So moving on, we're now ready for CTE recognitions, and so I'll turn that over to Dr. Brown.
Thank you. This year we've decided that we wanted to recognize a few of our folks. These students are part of our CTSOs, and they have worked very hard to earn the right to go to state. If they placed at state, then they have the right to go to national. So we've decided we wanted to recognize those who won the opportunity, placed at regional or local, and were able to go to state. So first off, I'm going to call up Miss Pam Thurman. She is our DECA sponsor at Spring Hill High School. And although there are many, we're gonna attempt to just call out the ones who are here. So. And for Ms. Pam Thurman, we have Julia Weaver. Okay. Jordan Grace. And I want to call Anna Brewer's name. Her mother, I believe, is here to accept the award for her. Anna placed and will be going to nationals. She did go to nationals. She did go to nationals. Okay, Mom just stepped out, I suppose. Okay, so now I want to call our FBLA folks up. Miss Jan Thomason with Santa Fe Unit School. And with Miss Jan, there is Christian Cervantes. And Emily Wilkinson. And now I'd like to call up Mr. Ray Wilson. Ms. Hunter was not able to make it with us tonight, but they are the sponsors of FBLA at Central High School. And Mr. Ray Wilson is going to call up Mr. Mason Gallagher. Will Spencer. And now I'll call up Miss Wissy Gerald with Hampshire Unit School. And our first student will be Alexa Cathy. Hunter Earls Fender. Kay Jones. Anna Morrow. Macy Parsons. Georgia Claire Varble. Thank you. And now I believe we are ready for Xhosa. And we will start with Dr. Brianna Humphrey and Miss Mandy Wilkinson, if we can get them to come up. They are with Central High School. We have Michaela Robinson. That's okay. Mystica, sorry. Ortega. I tried to make sure I got these names right before I got up here. Madison Reese. Haley Reese. Cassandra Morgan. Adam Centino. He was proud I got his name right. And that's what she said. Dr. Humphrey helped me. Sorry. Okay, and our next Xhosa group will be Miss Letitia Reeves' group out of Spring Hill High School. I'll ask that she come forward. Grace Ralston. Jessie Hepp. Kayla Thien. Kyle Tidwell. Sarah Gilbert. Taylor Reeves. And we did have one other group, our first-year group at Spring Hill High School with Skills USA, Miss Tracy Luttrell's group, and I'm not sure is there anyone here? Okay, so we will move forward. I want to thank all of our CTSO sponsors. They put in a lot of hours making sure that these students are prepared to go to skills competitions and just helping them become better citizens, more skilled for their future. It's just beyond belief the hours that they put in, and I do want to thank them for that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, and congratulations to all of the people that have been recognized. Do we got a few more to recognize? Okay, well, we'll fit in a few more. Go right ahead.
Hampshire, I'm so sorry. Heather Parsons, would you please come up? And this is a new program as well. I did not mean to leave you out. But I want to brag on these folks a little bit. There are two first ever Murray County Public Schools ever placed middle schoolers. And Avery Keeler is here, I believe, with us tonight. And I want to go ahead and say to Anthony Legaria, but he is not here tonight. So that is the first time that in our history, Murray County Public School history, that any middle schoolers have placed at the CTSO competitions at the state level. So thank you.
All right, thank you again. Moving on, looks like we have some Governor School participants and some merit scholars. So it looks like that's going to be presented by Ms. Miller.
Good evening. Tonight we are very pleased to recognize Ms. Cheyenne Martin from Santa Fe Unit School as a National Merit Scholarship recipient. I apologize ahead of time if I say this wrong. Ben Zolkowitz at Hampshire Unit School, National Merit Scholarship recipient. It is a huge honor for those students, and we're very proud of them. For Governor's School, we have Miss Emma Britt from Central High School, who has been accepted into the 2017 Governor's School for Humanities at UT Martin. And Miss Morgan Wood at Mount Pleasant High School, 2017 Governor's School for Arts at MTSU. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. All right, I think that wraps up all the recognitions and announcements. So with that, why don't we take about maybe a 5-minute break. So we'll come back at 10 till 7. We'll let some of the crowd disperse a little bit, and then we'll come back, and then we'll go ahead and go into our board session and start doing get some business done, okay? All right, we're going to go ahead and start coming to order here in a minute.
Do we have any public delegation?
All right, so looks like we do have a quorum now, so we can go ahead and actually officially go into session so we can do some business. Now that we do have a quorum, first item up, I'm going to ask the vice chair to take the roll.
Okay. Ms. Parker? Here. Ms. Kinzer? Ms. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Pennings? Mr. Moore is present. Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. Bates?
Here.
Mr. Beaver? Ms. Powers? Ms. Morency? Mr. Dudley? Mr. Chairman, we do have 7 members.
All right, so we've got 7 members. We're ready to go. Moving on into our agenda, well, we've got a proposed agenda in front of us. Does anybody have any changes? If not, is there a motion to approve? I got a motion by Mr. Atkinson, second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing no lights, we're ready to vote. All right, Ms. Johnson, if you'll report the vote, is it 7-0?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well.
7 yes.
All right, looks like that passes on a vote of 7-0. Moving on we can skip over recognitions and announcements since we've already taken care of those. Next up on the agenda, we have the Murray County Education Association. Mr. Huebner.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. First order of business from one David to another, I want to thank you for your leading this group the past almost 2 years, and I've appreciated really getting to know you in a more personal way the last few months too. That's from one David to another, and to another David, congratulations. I'm not sure you know what you're getting into. I actually think you do. I've been here when you've conducted a couple meetings, do a very good job. So congratulate you as well too. I do want to affirm the support that our commissioners and our school board have given to the 3% raise. I think it's strong, and we're hoping that all works out. I did not hear much that they were opposed to it, and I know you stand strong on that. So we know it's in the process, but we're not quite there yet, and we just have to be patient with that. So we just want to let you know we appreciate your continued support in all the raises that are coming to all of our employees. And my other final word would be the teachers that are here, not many left, but have a great summer, and I'll see you at the next board meeting, okay? Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Huebner. I appreciate that. All right, now we have the public delegation section of our agenda. We always enjoy getting input from our citizens. So did anyone sign up to speak to any item on the agenda tonight? All right, so we got a blank slate. Moving on. Staff report, and I don't see anything under that item. Consent items. Does anybody want to pull any of those items off to vote on separately? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? We got a motion by Mr. Atkinson, second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Ms. Martin, how would you like to vote? All right, yay. So we got to have a yay for Ms. Martin, so you can close that. Okay. All right, so that motion does pass on a vote of 7-0, I believe. All right, so moving on to our committee reports. All right, first up, Mr. Moore, we have the recommendations and reports from your committee on zoning facilities. Now, one thing, I guess, just kind of to clarify, item A1, that's just a report. I don't see that being an action item. I don't think there was any type of recommendation from the committee on that item. And then, Mr. Moore, prior to the meeting, you informed me that Spring Hill has asked us to defer item A2. That's the MOU. I think they wanted to submit some more information. Okay. So we're going to, can we by common consent, can we defer that until our next meeting without necessarily having to take a vote? Everybody? All right. No objections. We'll move that on to the next agenda. That will go, A2 will go on the next agenda. All right. So we have action items, recommendations from the committee on items A3 through A14. Does anybody want to pull any of those items off for separate discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve and adopt the committee's recommendations? A3. Let me just make sure, let me see if there's anybody who wants to pull anything off. All right, so I'm not seeing anything. If not, is there a motion to approve items, adopt the recommendations, approve and adopt the recommendations of the committee, A3 through A14, excuse me. All right, so we got a motion by Mr. Atkinson. We got a second by Mr. Moore. Actually, it doesn't need it. You're right. All right. So we got a motion by Mr. Atkinson to approve and adopt the recommendations. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. When you're looking at your e-meeting, my understanding, if you'll click on item A3, that's what pull up the vote prompt. All right, Ms. Johnson, if you will record Ms. Martin's vote as yes. All right, so that motion does pass on a vote of 7-0. All right, skipping down into the agenda, we're now on the policy committee. Ms. Parker, it looks like your committee has some previous recommendations that are on the docket for final approval. Does anybody want to pull any of those particular policies, proposed policies, off for separate discussion and vote? Ms. Powers. All right, so we're going to pull off policy 3.211. And I would also request to pull for separate discussion policy 1.206. Does anybody want to pull anything else for separate discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you just making sure it works. All right. So with that, so we're going to pull those two policies off for separate discussion. Is there a motion to give final approval to the remaining policies? That would be 1.807, 4.606, 4.700, and 6.411. All right, so we got a motion by Mr. Atkinson to give final approval. All right, and that is, again, coming out of committee, so we do not require a second on that. Any discussion on that motion? These are all the policies that are proposed for final adoption with the exception of 1.206 and 3.211. Seeing no lights, we're ready to vote on that. All right, thank you, Ms. Johnson. So it looks like that motion does pass on a vote to 7-0. So those policies have received final approval. All right, moving back to the first, we'll just kind of maybe take these in order if it's okay. Policy 1.206, board member compensation. I am the one that asked that to be removed for separate discussion and vote. I certainly, as far as the policy itself and the intent behind the policy, I support wholeheartedly. I do think that it's probably well overdue, and I do think that maybe this can encourage more board members to participate in the process. And it is probably only fair that school board members be paid the same as our county commissioners for attending meetings and committee meetings. But for me, I do have to from a personal standpoint, I just feel like I have a personal conflict voting to give myself a raise. If the policy had remained as, I think, where the policy would only go into effect after the next cycle, after the next election, I may be able to support it, but as it's currently written, I can't support that particular policy. Any other discussion on that? Mr. Moore.
I would only say if, and I appreciate your position on that, Mr. Bates, the only problem with that is that if we did that, no one would ever vote for this. It's just a simple function. If everyone had to wait until it was somebody else's turn, it would never get done. And I appreciate your position on that. My position all along has been that if this is going to take place, it should take place whenever the next budget year started. And I thought that was appropriate. I'm not exactly comfortable with it either, but I think from a functional standpoint, putting politics or any other thing aside, starting it with the next budget fiscal year is the most appropriate time.
Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the way our board is seated, there is always going to be board members, sitting board members who are continue to serve when raises go into effect, and then as Mr. Moore has stated, you know, and then I concur with you. Everybody hates voting for theirself a raise, but at the same time, out of fairness, I think each of us deserve the same compensation as the county commissioners, and so you know, I am in favor of this. You know, I think our expense and our time of coming to the meetings is the same as the county commissioners, and oftentimes those that have child care expenses are losing money, and it does cost, and so I think it could encourage other citizens to run for this office. We wonder why oftentimes nobody wants to run for the school board. Well, the low compensation may be a reason, and so it could encourage other members of the public to run also. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you, Mr. Dudley. Ms. Parker? Okay. All right. See no other lights. Ready to vote. Wait a second. We don't have a motion yet. Sorry. You think by now, Mr. Moore, I'd have this figured out, but I'm still working on it. All right. So is there a motion to approve policy for final approval, policy 1.206? Got a motion by Mr. Dudley. Again, that did come out of committee, so it doesn't require a second. Any other discussion? See now, ready to vote. All right, that motion does pass on a vote of 6-1, and so that policy has received final approval. Moving on to the remaining policy, we have policy 3.211. Ms. Powers, you had requested to pull that for separate discussion, so I'll turn it over to you.
As far as numbers go and the size of schools, from what we've discussed and the input that we've received, I do like these numbers. I do feel like we specifically had a request from central office not to put that into policy. So I feel like in all pulling in the same direction, I might be in favor of that. But as far as numbers go, if we're going to have a policy, I do like these numbers.
Ms. Parker.
I think the way that the policy is written, it gives our superintendent
some flexibility to come before us if there is a need to deviate from these numbers. But I think, as we saw with the McDowell situation, when the initial number that they were given was 480, and Mr. Breeden said, can you push it to 500? I think when they have some guiding principles, I think it helps make our system run more efficiently. And I think there's a reason why we need to have something in place. This doesn't lock us into just having elementary, middle, and high school. It says that there can be other programs, there can be other grade configurations. I don't think this locks us into anything specifically, but going forward, and especially for the growth that we're seeing in our county, and moving forward, I think we need to move towards more uniformity and quit trying to do something at one place that we don't do at another place. Because it's hard to be efficient when you're trying to operate 22 individual schools with no commonality.
And I do appreciate, I think from a policy standpoint, I think I've been persuaded that it is probably good to have some parameters, some starting parameters. I guess what, as far as the policy as it's written right now, I can't support it. I've got some concerns about it. And these are practical concerns that I think are right now in front of us. One particular school that we have right now that is at capacity is Colioca. It's about 1,000 students right now, so you got to figure you've got probably about 300, 350 in high school right now, and it's already at capacity. For me, I would like to, one day, if that school is over capacity, I'd like to be able to have the option to be able to build a new high school in Colioca. And probably if we build a high school in Colioca, it's probably going to be around 500 students. That would probably be the parameter. But the way this policy is written right now, we can't do that. The minimum for a high school is 1,200. And I just do not think that's logistically sound policy with Colioca being as far out as it is. I just do not think that those students ought to be bussed in somewhere so we can have a 1,200 capacity high school. Another example is right here in the building that we're sitting in right now. And these are not far-fetched theoretical things. We're in the Horace Porter School, and there's been a lot of discussion about having the community school back in this location. And right now, my understanding Horace Porter is at capacity. The capacity is probably what it says in the sheet is 200. I would think we'd at least be able to have 300 students here. But the way this policy is written right now, we're saying no. We cannot have an elementary school here at Horace Porter because the minimum number is 500. So I understand that the policy does have some flexibility, and I recognize that. But if at the outset we're making a policy that does not meet the needs of our school, to me, why do you pass a bad policy to begin with? Yes, and maybe in some respect, if the policy could be shaped in such a way that would meet the needs of our community, I might be able to support it, but I can't support it as it is right now. And another thing is, as far as these numbers that we're looking at, if it had some basis, if it had some rationale where somebody had persuaded me, this is the ideal size for an elementary school, or this is the ideal size for a middle school or high school, and there was some data to support that, research to support that said this is what's best for the students, then I might be able to change my mind. But my understanding how this came out of committee, this doesn't have any basis. This doesn't have any type of investigation or research. It was just a number that was pulled out of the air. And so I cannot support us having a policy when that policy has no purpose. If it had a purpose, if it had research to back it up where it said having a school up to an elementary school between 500 to 800 is the best academically for students, I'd be all for it. But I have not seen that research, and in fact, the research that we have reviewed indicates that that's not what's best for students. And so for me personally, I can't support the policy as it's written right now. Ms. Parker.
With regards to Colioca, again, Colioca is a unit school which is not listed on here. So if we did decide that we wanted to have a high school at Colioca, again, the superintendent has every authority to come before us and say, I want to do a 500-person high school. However, I will say at this point, with Mount Pleasant not being at maximum capacity, it's real hard for, I think, us to justify building another high school when we have schools that are not at full capacity. With regards to Xhosa Porter, this is in regards to construction to begin new projects. H.O. Porter does not have to be built. It exists. If we want to have a new program or a new school at H.O. Porter, no shovels have to be put in the ground. No land has to be built. Nothing has to be done except to reconfigure the school and have a proposal that's brought to us that makes sense. With regards to research, if we wanted to research all of our policies, we would be here every single night of the month. And I think our central office would be very tired because I don't think they have the time to research every single one of our policies for academic pros and cons. And quite frankly, with data, I can make the data say whatever the data needs to say. I can show you a school that has 2,500 kids that probably got a U.S. News and World Report Gold Star. And I can show you a school that had 383 kids that got a Bronze Star tonight. So I'm not saying that we need a one-size-fits-all, but what I'm saying is I don't want to debate this every single time. I'm trying to make sure that our staff has some direction going forward. And what really disturbs me is that this is for final adoption. Why was this not discussed last month so we could send this back to our policy committee and have the discussion about what the size of the school should be? It seems to me that we've gotten into a situation where we've got graduations tonight and we potentially have people that are interested in seeing this policy go through that do not have a chance to vote on this policy because people have decided that now is when they want to raise the issue. And I think that's a little bit ridiculous. But, you know, if we want to debate the size of schools every time, you know, we can do that. It's clear that there are certain times that the size of schools matter. There are certain times that the size of schools do not matter. In Spring Hill, sorry, you got to have 800 kids in your school or 700 kids in your elementary school. But if you live in another section of this county, you don't have to have that. You can have that many kids in your entire school. So we're not consistent, and until I see some efficiency throughout our county, I'm going to have a hard time voting for anything going forward on any building projects. And that includes areas where there's growth if I've got to sit here and debate it at every single meeting. And I personally feel like our construction manager, our facilities operations, I don't think that they have the time to go and sit in all these meetings. And we pay Hewlett Spencer or whoever our construction manager is a lot of money to manage these projects. I don't want our staff wasting their time on that because that's not what we paid them to do, to debate the academic merits of the size of the school. They need some marching orders, they need some parameters, and ultimately we get to decide whether or not we want to go forward. It's up to us in the end. But to just say, build a 100-person school, build a 1,000-person school, just whatever you want to do, that makes absolutely no sense. We all operate with a guiding principle, and that's all our policies are guiding principles in a lot of situations. I feel like it's the Bible in a lot of situations, and there are times that our central office is not always viewed that as the Bible, so to speak, and I don't mean that in a blasphemous way, but I think that there are times that people need to know what the expectations are, and they don't just need to be able to pull out whatever academic article fits their particular political need at that moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. And I know it's very easy, you know, this can be an emotional topic, but I do try to take the emotions aside from this and try to be a little bit more sterile and look at this from the benefit of what's best for the students. And that's, for me personally, that's how I'm viewing it. You know, people may disagree, but when I read the research, it indicates to me that an 800-unit school in elementary level, it can work, but is it the optimum? That's my understanding of the research, that's not the optimum size. So that's my viewpoint. I respect your viewpoint, and I hope you respect yours
as well. I would say, though, when you say that you're trying to keep emotions out of it, I am completely emotion-free about this, only from the standpoint of I feel like this is kind of the wrong time for this discussion to have been brought up at the very end after this committee has debated this multiple times in our committee, and it was on the agenda last month as well, to have this discussion after we've had our staff post it for 60 days. I feel like this is kind of the wrong time to be bringing it up. But aside from that, these numbers are sterile to me. You want to talk about being sterile? 500 to 850, that's sterile. Now, if I feel that it's incumbent upon our superintendent to bring to me the non-sterile side, to bring to me, this is what the kids in this area need. That's what we pay him to do. I'm just trying to give him the sterile numbers that gives him a framework, and if he feels a reason to deviate from that, that's certainly within his prerogative, and then at that point, I feel like we can make a decision.
And like I said, I certainly see the intent to have some ranges. I do see that is something to look at. Just the particular ranges that we're looking at from right now, I personally, I can't support that as a board policy. Again, when I look at really the next upcoming thing that we're going to have to deal with is Culleoka. That is at capacity right now. I think it's not been on our radar as much as it's been. And that school's at capacity. And so I think from a policy standpoint, do we want to say that we cannot build a high school to be able to deal with that growth unless it's a 1,200 unit high school? And I do understand that we could, yes, we got some flexibility on rezoning. I think we can probably buy some time on the rezoning, but I think we also have to recognize the geographical facts of our county. Culleoka and Mount Pleasant are a pretty good ways from each other. And yes, we could be able to move maybe some students over to the Mount Pleasant area, but I think what we'll find when we start looking at a map and you start drawing lines on that map, you could take big swaths of land, many, many miles, and it will not move that many students. It's just the reality of the geography and we're in Murray County is the 10th largest county in the state out of almost 100 counties. We are a large county. It's a vast county to drive all the way from the north end of the county all the way to the south end or east to west. It is a big, big county. So I think that's something else that I do not see in the current policy as it's written right now. I just do not see that being addressed. Mr. Moore.
Just two things. To me, I'm not 100% approving of the numbers that are in here. However, I understand the reason we brought this out of committee to give the central office some direction and not be looking at a wide scope of, or having to guess what kind of the next school would do. I guess to Mr. Bates' points, I see the flexibility is 100% retained in this. The line items, alternate grade configurations, and school sizes may be recommended by the superintendent and approved by the board. That line right there pretty much says we can do whatever we want at any time. This doesn't tie our hands, but I think it does give the direction to the staff to at least have a starting point when it comes to new schools. I don't see any limitations if you look at your example of Culleoka. I see nothing here that stops us from meeting that need, however we deem we need to meet it. But I think as we talk about just new schools on greenfield sites, which is I think what most of the intent of this was for, it gives some direction to the staff. To go with that too, I'm a little disappointed that this is coming up now. I wish it had been done earlier and not on the second reading of this. If we have a problem with the numbers or don't like the policy, sending it back to the committee for further discussion probably would have been more appropriate.
Ms. Parker.
The last thing I was going to say is with regards to Culleoka, I agree that Culleoka probably is going to have some needs that come up. However, according to the plan that we've been given, I think the needs for it are like in year 5 to 10. So to say that those are the immediate needs, that's not what was reflected on the information that we've been given by central office or by Dr. Register. And with regards to Culleoka, I feel like while it may not be feasible to build a 1,200 person high school, it may be feasible to build a X number, 750 persons, 7 through 12. So I still do not feel like this policy limits us from being able to make smart decisions. The reality is we have a lot of needs in this county, and I mean, we sent an $85 million budget for capital requests, and they pretty much told us that ain't gonna happen. So we have needs, but we also have to be cognizant of using the taxpayers' dollars as best we can. And I think having plans drawn up and things like that that really aren't consistent with being good stewards of that taxpayer money, I think that does no one any favors. I think it makes us look poor before the commission. I think it makes us look poor before the people that we serve.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Ms. Powers.
After further discussion on this policy and the way it's written, that it is meant to give a general outline, I will support it, but I do appreciate the flexibility is given to the central office to make changes if needed.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing now, we're ready to vote. Well, actually, we don't have a motion yet. Sorry. All right. All right, so we got a motion by Ms. Parker to approve the policy committee's recommendation. That does not require a second, so this is for final approval. Ready to vote. All right, that motion does fail on a vote of 5-2. 5-2. All right, move through the agenda. We have a recommendation out of the Budget Committee on a parallel contract. I believe that's dealing with substitute teachers. And Ms. Hargrove, maybe you can come up and maybe give us just a refresher on the presentation that you made to the Budget Committee.
Our average fill rate is averaging about 80%, and what that means for our classrooms is right now we're going about 18, the average of 18 classrooms empty and not filled. This is not just a Murray County issue, it is a statewide issue. A lot of other districts have looked at outsourcing subs, and some of those have secured companies to outsource subs. So we started looking at, could we do this on our own? We went all this year trying, recruiting. We actually hired about 145 new subs, which made our active pool 248 this year, and we still had those fill rates of 80%. We've been compensating teachers to come in to those 18 empty classrooms. What that causes, though, is burnout, as well as the teachers have now doubled their class size. So when we started looking at, and when you announce that you want to look at substitute outsourcing companies, you get bombarded with phone calls. So we kind of screened through those and got our top 3 picks based on certain criteria that we had, and then a committee was formed. That committee consisted of administrators, and it consisted of folks that work directly with substitutes on payroll, and then also a person from the Human Resources Department. We nailed it down to 3, had those folks come in, make a presentation, and the company that was chosen was Parallel Education. They were chosen based on several different things. One is they actually use the same exact absentee software that we use now. So therefore, we would not have to train our staff on another software program. We did not want to have to do that. Also, they're in-house, and they work hands-on with administrators, so we can actually see the folks that are coming to our buildings and are going to be subs. They also offered really good training for not just substitutes, but also for teachers. There was a training program that they will implement for teachers on how to leave lesson plans and that sort of thing. So they trained both sides of the fence. And then basically they offered the best bill rate. It just so happened they were the most economical. So that was our reasoning for hiring outsourcing. I've had some concerns about what about existing subs. All of those existing subs in our pool will actually be on the hiring list for parallel. They will go through another drug screen, they'll go through another background check, and then we will get a $25 back for every one of the subs currently in our pool. So those folks are not going to lose their jobs. They're actually going to just go to a different company. And with this company, they'll be able to work 5 days a week. They will be able to get benefits, and their pay will be the same. So they will be paid the same rate as what we're paying now.
All right, so does anybody have any questions or discussion from Ms. Hargrove? If not, is there a motion to approve the Budget Committee's recommendation? Mr. Moore.
Just having some concerns from some people in the public. Have you heard anything that some subs may not want to move over to this program or this system?
I've heard from one sub, one of our existing subs, they don't want to be outsourced. I tried to explain to him, you know, it's really going to be a better opportunity for you, but that's the only one that I have heard from.
Okay.
Ms. Powers.
I have, someone reached out, it may be the same person, but, you know, very negative, and it's someone on our funding body, and I've reached out hopeful to engage in that conversation, but as a parent, I really don't, if someone is not in the school, is not seeing what's going on, I think if we could have fixed this problem, we would have, I mean, for the record, for everyone that's watching this, I really want to engage in this conversation. And I think some schools, I would love to know if this is true, but I perceive some schools are harder to fill subs. And I think my children attend several of those schools. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous that my kids are spending a day in the cafeteria or the gym in these huge groups because they do not have subs in their school. There's a whiteboard, the names that are not being filled is ridiculous. It is not quality, and I think y'all are doing the best we can. Am I correct?
Yes.
If we could fix this without trying this, I think we would have. But in elementary and middle, I can say there are days where I see teachers that are jumping, you know, someone's running in there for this hour and then someone else, because we've got a plan to pay teachers for their giving up their planning period and this and that. I mean, we've tried creative solutions, and there's still classrooms that are empty. Some schools probably more than others, but at the schools that cannot fill their subs, it is wasted days. And for the record, half the time when there is a sub, it is not a managed classroom. There is still no educational benefit. There are schools that have a large number of children that are wasting days. So I am terribly sorry if someone is not going to support our budget because we make this choice. If we could solve this problem another way, I venture we would have by now. This is a situation we've got to try something new.
Thank you, Ms. Powers, and I agree with those sentiments as well. I mean, it's something that I think is a tough decision to make, but I mean, I guess we're kind of coming to this, what is the problem? I mean, we've got a problem where on average we're only covering how much of our?
80%.
80%. I mean, and I think last year we increased the pay for substitute teachers to try to be more competitive, I think. Is that correct, Ms. Hargrove?
Yes.
And so, and I think this is something that other counties are struggling with, and other counties have moved in this direction, which including, is Williamson County also?
Williamson County is looking. I actually talked to Rebecca up there. We've got about 42 subs that are both Murray County and Williamson County.
Right.
We've got 248 in our pool. They got about 376. So
Okay.
it's a very small quantity.
But then there was
of
one
subs.
county that you did reach out to that has adopted
Yes.
this before?
Yes,
Who was
there
that?
are several. Metro has actually went to outsourcing. Cheatham County uses Parallel, as well as Robertson County, and I've got them listed.
But as far as this evaluation progress, did you reach out to some of those school
I did.
districts?
I reached out to all the counties, whether they're used Parallel or some other program. Regardless of the company, they all just raved about it. Another thing that it does that you might not see on paper, it also allows administrators, a lot of wasted time is wasted just trying to find subs for those classrooms. So it allows those administrators to actually be in their schools and do something instructional and do something for their school other than finding a substitute.
But as far as solving the problem, this company, they guarantee that they're going to cover, instead of our 80%, they're going to cover 95% of the classrooms. And so I think that's a good benefit. I mean, that's what we as a school board are trying to do. Is it a perfect solution? I don't think it is, but we've got to try something to try to have more substitute teachers in the classroom. And I think also, did you say, Ms. Hargrove, that a lot of the principals were really requesting this?
Yes, ones I've
to be able
talked
to
to.
relieve them from.
Yeah, some of them have left. You might could speak on, and I know Mr. Ford, he has a lot of subs. Being one of the biggest elementary schools, they might can speak on administratively wise how many hours they spend just trying to find subs.
I don't spend a lot, Mr. Carter does.
That's his job. Okay.
We're talking about outsourcing substitutes and how much time administratively is spent at the school just trying to find subs for classrooms.
It varies from week to week, but with about 40 staff members, it can get pretty time consuming.
Okay. Mr. Moore.
Just another concern I'd heard from various people, and I know you've addressed it, and I appreciate you bringing up the fill rate, because to me, that's one of the biggest benefits here, is if we can move that up to 95, that's a huge impact. One of the other things I'd heard from people, and if you could just kind of walk through it, obviously, when we bring on a third party, there's a surcharge to that, so that the cost that we would pay per day goes up. One of the arguments I heard, well, why don't we just pay the subs more? So what would be your response to that?
We could do that, but a lot of our subs are looking for 5 days a week in benefits. And we still can't, because of ACA, we still can't work them more than 4 days a week without offering them insurance. And the cost of that would be huge. So I don't even, and I've asked some subs, hey, what if we paid more per day to try to get, I'll recruit at Walmart, Hobby Lobby, everywhere I'm constantly recruiting. Why don't your friends sub? They just want that 5 days a week. They want the security of knowing that they're going to basically have a full-time job with benefits. A few of them, yes, are fine without the benefits, but the majority of subs want 5 days a week, and we're losing them to manufacturing and other companies that are coming in because they get those benefits, and that's very important to them.
Okay, thank you.
Because there's going to be that surcharge, are we going to have any cost savings within your department from not having to oversee the substitute training and background checks and things like that?
Right, background checks, drug screens, we'll have a cost savings for that. There will be some labor cost, of course, as well as our software that we currently use now for our absentee system. They will absorb that cost, so we won't have to pay for it. We still have the use, but we won't have to pay for that software system anymore. So we're looking at about $40,000 in savings altogether. But then, of course, there'll be an added salary increase. Mm-hmm.
So how much are you expecting it to be more net?
About $200,000.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see it's a 60-day out clause. Is that correct? If we find it is not working.
Yes, on the contract?
Yes.
Yes.
And so that's a minimum 60 days.
You want to speak to the contract?
I think the contract starts out for a year, and then it'll auto-renew if you want it to, but the contract, if after 60 days you're unhappy with the services, then you just send us a written notice that you want to end your services with us.
Well, that seems conflicting. Is it a 60-day minimum or is it a year minimum?
The term is for a year, but you can get out of it. If you decide we're not doing our job and your fill rates are not better, then the contract, you can cancel the contract.
Okay. Ms. Woodward, do you agree? That I agree the term is for a year, but if we see it is not working and we do not have a 95% fill rate, and then we just say it just absolutely is not working with a 60-day notice.
That's right. You really don't even have to have a reason. It's just a termination for convenience, but you have to give them notice, and then 60 days later the contract.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the Budget Committee's recommendation? And I do want to point out the Budget Committee's recommendation was subject to the approval of the 17-18 budget because it does have a budget increase. So that is actually what the Budget Committee's recommendation is. Is there a motion? All right, got a motion by Mr. Moore that did come out of committee, so it does not require a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right. All right, so that motion does pass on a vote of 6-1. All right, moving on into the agenda. Community relations, I don't see anything on the agenda, but let me see if, Ms. Powers, you got any announcements or reports?
I'm just working with Chairman Fulbright to find a date and hopefully do a get-together. With the heat coming on, we are exploring doing an intellectual competition of the escape room down in Mount Pleasant, hopefully. But we haven't gotten that far in our conversation. We've kind of been exchanging emails. Optimistic.
Now, I guess do we still have our trophy up here on the courthouse? Oh, okay.
I have told them that if they don't want to get
I've
back
kinda
together,
wondered
we're
if we don't
happy to
even
keep
give them a
the
chance to-
trophy.
Yeah, that's right. We don't even give them a chance to get their trophy back. So, yeah. But thank you, Ms. Powers. I think that it's been a great success thus far, and look forward to continuing to have some activities like that. Very good. All right, moving on to new business. We have volunteer coaches. You all see those volunteer coaches in our packet. Is there any discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve those volunteer coaches? Oh, you don't need a motion?
No, you decided at a previous meeting that I would approve and I would FYI you on.
Oh, so it's just an FYI.
All these folks have met the
Okay.
requirements and are now okay to be volunteer coaches.
Okay, all right.
So each meeting.
Well,
And then
thanks for the FYI.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
the second part of that is the co-op agreements, and that is the co-op agreements where schools that don't have a sport co-op with another school.
Okay.
I need your approval so that I can send it to TWSAA that's been approved by the school board.
And is that those co-op agreements, that's something that's been done routinely for
years.
several years and years? Okay.
Yeah. Most of those co-op agreements that you're looking at have been ongoing for a long time.
All right.
Yeah.
So with that, is there any discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the co-op request? All right, got a motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Atkinson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no, ready to vote. Miss Martin's acting silly over here, so we're going to put her down as a yes. Now, are you allowed to vote if you're acting silly, though? I don't know. No. All right, so it looks like we've got the votes in, Ms. Sheridan. I believe she took a break. So. All right, that motion does pass, I believe, on a vote of 6-0. Moving on into our agenda, other business, we have instructional low bids and purchases over $10,000. First item up, A1, we've got bid number 17519. This is Ames Webb. And I guess you're filling in for Mr. Gaines. So any questions or discussion on that? Mr. Moore.
Only question, what was the cost last year?
Last year, we budgeted, I believe it was $56,000. This is And actually, I'm working on our final numbers. We had about 9,100 kids actually use AimsWeb this year, so we've just increased it for next year.
Okay, so it's a per license subscription, so there's going to be a little bit of variation there.
We have to license one per student K-8.
And it's required software by the state for RTI.
Okay.
So we have to do it.
So does it offer some sort of like lessons or something? Remind me again, I should know by now. I should have all these programs. I should have a cheat sheet, I guess, to keep up with the program. So what does it do?
AimsWeb is our universal screener, so it determines if students fall below the 25th percentile and need Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. And according to state board policy, students have to have response to instruction and intervention in order to qualify for special ed benefits.
Okay, so this is kind of the test that is used in order to, in some ways, determine what tier they're on in some ways?
To identify those kids that need extra help.
Okay. All right. All right, got a motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Atkinson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, ready to vote? All right, the motion does pass on a vote of 7-0. Moving on into our agenda, we have our operational bids. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run through each bid and see if there's any questions or discussion, and then we'll see how we'll take up that vote. First item up under item B1 of our agenda is the lease of computers for the diploma program. Questions or discussion? I'm just going to go through each one, and we'll discuss it, and then then we'll figure out how to vote, I guess. Ms. Parker?
Okay. What's the total cost on each of our devices when you add in the lease, the learning management software? Okay.
The lease price total is $110,463.10 per year for 3 years. So are you asking just divide that number by 500 and multiply it times 3? Is that, you want to know the cost for the?
No, I want to know the cost for everything that goes on the computer, the total cost for the one-to-one device. So including the learning management software, including the insurance, including the covers, the cases, all the stuff that goes with it.
I'm sorry, I can't give you that number right now. The lease price includes all of the preloaded software we get, which is the tracking software, the
Norton or antivirus.
I think we're buying the antivirus under a separate license, and we're buying the filtering software under a separate license that we're doing. And I don't remember those. The iBoss filtering system that when they take off of our network, it still prevents them from going to sites that they shouldn't.
Okay. I guess the concern I have is when we talk about doing for grades 3 through 12, how many total kids is that? I mean, we've got 12,000 kids.
It's about 9,000.
Okay.
Or a little bit less there.
The numbers that, I mean, this is a 3-year lease, so the 110 times 3 divided by 500, that gives you a little bit of a cost. Then you got to do the same thing for the insurance, and you have to do the same thing for the learning management software. Then you have to do the same thing.
Yeah, now this
for
price
the
does
engineering.
include the insurance. I do know
Okay.
that it does include the insurance.
My concern is when you take the total cost, and after we've bought pieces here and there, I feel like it's a lot closer to at least 700, 750 per device. You multiply that times 9,000, that puts us up over 6 million for what we've got to spend on these devices. And I just don't know that we have the money for that. So I really I'm concerned that we spread our net too wide on this as far as what we can actually fund. And I just want us to be a little bit more realistic about it going forward and really figure out what we need to do to maximize our bang for our buck on this. And I'm not saying that the price that we have for this is a bad price, but I'm not sure that we're there yet to actually go 1-to-1, 3 through 12. I don't think that we have the money for it.
And that's one of the things that the board talked about. This was a long-term commitment. Yeah, we're definitely not going to go 1-to-1 in a year. We know that. One of the things that we do have creeping up on us for next year is that all high schools will test online. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They're not sending any paper pencil tests. So that's one of the things we're talking about this summer. How many kids is that going to be? And like how quickly can we get those high school teachers in high schools to get certified through the TIMS rubric, through diploma? Because just because the high schools are teaching online, does that mean we automatically give computers to every single kid? That kind of invalidates the process, because if they're only going to use them for testing, then it kind of defeats the process of us changing our instructional practices to integrate digital curriculum to put devices or to put the world's information at kids' fingertips. So those are some internal conversations we've been having, and Tommy is gathering those numbers, and we will be bringing some stuff back to the June board meeting for the board to consider. Possibly seeing where we are with fund balance. Can we access some one-time money? But definitely for next year, looking at taking a cost and trying to build that into the budget. That's what we're going to be trying to do. So,
See, part of the concern I have, though, is for this is a lease.
Yes.
So in 3 years, we got to do this all over again. We don't have these computers in our arsenal, so to speak,
Yes.
like our Chromebooks that we purchased and whatnot.
True.
Which in 3 years, you've told me the technology is essentially obsolete most times, or computer
every 3 to
keys
4, yeah.
have come off or whatnot. So we've got to make a new investment. So when I say $6 million, I'm talking about $6 million essentially over 3 years, but then that's got to be added in going forward on
Yeah.
a 3-year rotation. And I just don't know that we have the money for this right now. I appreciate the fact that we want 3rd and 4th grade to have those computers, but if they're not being tested online and we know we have to have 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th graders, then they need to be the ones that get these devices. I mean, I know that that's kind of contrary to the way that you wanted to approach this. So I'm not necessarily opposed to purchasing these computers, because obviously there's a need for them. But I don't want to hear in a month that we need to buy more Chromebooks because we need to get these high schoolers some computers because their teachers and the students didn't get checked off on the TIMS rubric.
Yeah.
That's
Good
not
point.
a good use of our resources. We've got to use the resources for what our obligations are. And if 3rd and 4th are kind of optional at this point, then I don't feel like we should be spending our resources in that area. I want 3rd and 4th graders to have it. I really do. But I'm also looking at the fact that we got our budget back and we're probably not going to be able to raise our maintenance of efforts to pay for these things. And I'm not convinced that our fund balance, based on some of the other things that are on our agenda tonight, I'm not sure that it's as healthy as we've been led to believe. So I'm concerned about where we're going with this particular program, and I'd rather us get a handle on it before we start furthering our investment in it.
True. And really what diploma is about is more of a commitment of the school board to go down the digital pathway, not satisfy the digital plane yesterday. It's we agree that we need to move in this place. Of course, as you know, everything is contingent upon funding. It is. And we do the best we can with the resources we have to try to make that as equitable as possible. And that's just the nature of, that's the way it is. So I'm really impressed by this board to making a commitment to begin the process, to start to dip our toe into the one-to-one pathway, into the digital waters, and we do what we can with the money that we're allowed to spend. So completely understand.
Mr. Dudley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this goes back to some of my concerns where we've just heard a statement that next year our high schoolers have to test online, but yet this year we've placed the computers in the hands of our elementary students, and none of our high schoolers have received the computers. And so that's been some of my concerns.
Well, what's going to happen next year is, much like we had a rolling window this year to do assessments, we'll have a rolling window next year. So we will be able to utilize existing computer labs for assessment. This is the state's first real true test to go digital assessments. You know, last year they tried. It didn't work. So we imagine, or I imagine, that window for assessment is going to be extremely large for next year. So we'll be able to utilize current computer labs. However, the more devices we can get into high schools will mean those labs will be utilized even less, and we can lessen that window of assessments, which means teachers can spend more time teaching and less time assessing.
But we were told 2 years ago that our system was ready to do the test online 2
Yes.
years ago.
The state of Tennessee, unfortunately, was not.
And so
Yeah.
this year our system elected to do it with pencil and paper.
Yes.
You know, is our system ready to do it online or not?
We were ready last year. The bandwidth required by the previous testing vendor required very little bandwidth. We hit green last year. We would hit green again this year, and I imagine we're going to hit green again next year. It requires very little. There's no audio. There's no video. It's just data being transferred back and forth. It's not an issue for us.
Okay. Well, I would still like to see the computers in the hands of the high schoolers and not necessarily in the hands of the elementary students. And there again, I'm going to make my statement. If our high school teachers are not able to teach with computers, we need to look at their capacities of teaching with computers. And I hate to sound that way, but it's a fact that they've had opportunity to learn the computers and should be ready to teach with computers.
Yes, sir.
And of course, we got to keep in mind, I mean, there are computers at the high schools. We're talking about the one-to-one program where each individual student would have a school system provided computer. But I think it's some valid points that we do have to look at things from a budgeting standpoint and look at the long-range planning and what can we afford and how do we implement that with that in mind. If we know that we're kind of crunched on the budget, then maybe it does make sense to, do we look at maybe shifting some of those grades up and then maybe long range, then trying to shift it back down as we develop and as we get the computers. And another thing I think we also have to keep in mind, my understanding is the federal government, of course, who knows what they're going to pass as far as their budget, but I think there may be decreasing some E-rate funding and things like that we've used for technology. I don't know whether this would impact this, but we just need to be cognizant of those sorts of things too, that there may be less funding in some respects on those things. So I think it's certainly some valid things to talk about and to work through. Ms. Parker.
When we do the lease for this, and obviously there's the other things that kind of go with it as far as the learning management software and things like that, is it possible for us to defer this until they can all be put on at the same time? That way I can get a better idea of what it costs per. Because if we buy computers, then we're not just obligating ourselves to $110,000 here. Well, one, we're obligating ourselves essentially to $110,000 times 3, but then we're also obligating ourselves to the learning management system, to the filtering system, all of those other things. And I'd just rather vote on those collectively so we really have a better idea of what they are.
So you want to defer this till next month?
Yes.
I guess what I want some input from staff is that does that cause us any type of issues as far as being prepared to be able to have these devices in place for August 1st? That's kind of my primary, I guess, what I would be thinking.
Well, we have, the last time, what did we have, a 3-week, 4-week turnaround from Lenovo? So even if this went through in June, I believe these could still arrive before August 1st, so I think we'd still be okay.
But it is usually about a 4-week turnaround?
It could be 4 to 6 week turnaround because they're coming out of China. That's where Lenovo mass produces the computers.
And we do need a little bit of turnaround time. We have to, they do come preloaded with the software, but we do have to unbox them, set them up, and we've kind of developed a little assembly line at the tech shop to do that. I was texting with Mr. Schuyler. This 500 will bring us to 2,100 total student laptops that we will have now within our lease that we've leased this year. And this does not include the student management, the student learning
Learning management system.
Learning management system,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm
You're
trying
welcome.
to get that all out there while I read this. But all the other software in the case, I think it's about $741 per device.
Yeah.
All right, so Ms. Parker is asked to defer this until the June meeting. I guess I need to know whether, is that unanimous? Do we do that by common consent? Otherwise, we'll do that by motion. Y'all got to nod your head one way or the other. I don't know. Mr. Moore.
I just have concerns. I would like more information, but I have concerns that puts a pretty tight crunch on us getting these in hands if we decide to do it.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of waffling a little bit myself. Generally, I would not be opposed to getting more information, but I'm a little bit concerned with the timetable and making that, causing us to have maybe staff to have a time crunch to be able to get these computers ready for the start of school. So why don't we take it up? Ms. Parker, I'll go back to you. Do you want to make a motion to continue? Okay, so we got a motion by Ms. Parker to continue this until the next board meeting. All right, is there a second? All right, that's one last time. Is there a second? All right, so with that motion does require a second, so we don't have anything on the floor. So we're back on the discussion. Again, what we're going to do is just run through the discussion real quick, and we'll see if we'll be able to take these up in bundle or if we want to vote on things separately. Mr. Moore.
Sorry, I keep turning the button on and off. I guess to get to some of Ms. Parker's point, I mean, I think it's probably something we haven't really discussed is the total cost of implementing this program. And that's probably something we dropped the ball on as a board going into on the front end of this. I know it comes in a lot of pieces. That said, however this goes tonight, I would like to ask if we could probably get into that. I would like to kind of see some idea of what it's really costing us to implement this one-to-one program from different ways, from a per student cost, from a per device cost. I'd like to kind of look at those things so that we can really look at that, because I think Ms. Parker's brought up an excellent point that we really haven't talked about that in its totality. We've talked about little pieces here and there and some large pieces here and there, but we've never really looked at what the real impact is. And I guess coming on the heels of this week's budget discussions with the County Commission, I think it's imperative that we do make sure we look at all those as closely as we can and decide how we proceed with it.
Yeah, now as part of that, what I would like is just maybe just the big picture of what is the game plan, how this is going to be phased in. Are we going to try to get these grades and then we're going to move to these, and are we going to just like go all in to try to get from 0 to 100 within this amount of time or this amount of time? I mean, what is those kind of parameters so we can start thinking budget wise, okay, this is probably what ultimately is going to be the annual cost and that sort of thing, so we can start thinking along those lines. I think that would be very helpful. Mr. Moore.
And to go back in with that, as I keep saying with my accurate budgeting term that I keep using, I would like to know kind of like, because as I've talked with the superintendent about this, we're going to have to start moving these things into the general purpose budget, and I really would like to know what the big picture is. I think similar to what was proposed with the painting schedule to ramp that up, something like that, have an idea of what it would cost and how fast or slow So
Right,
we
if
can
we
get
did
an
it over
idea.
5 years, or if we
I think it would be
really
helpful for us to know that so that we can make
accelerated.
some wise decisions
I
on
think
how much we can handle.
Ms. Parker?
I just want to say, the biggest concern I've had with the way that we're doing this is we have a 3-year lease on this. So we essentially have a 3-year painting schedule. So we need to know what the cost for the 3-year painting schedule is, because these devices go away in 3 years. And the way that they're being rolled in, I mean, we're essentially going to have, in the middle of the 3rd year, we're going to be taking devices away from kids in March or April when that lease comes up. And so they're going to have a period of time where we've either got to go ahead and be all in on the next time, or, I mean.
No, Lenovo's letting us do 3 solid years. So they're letting us take them all the way through May of, what's 17, 18, 18, 19, May 2019. We've got them all the way to the end of the school year. And,
Is that what our contract says for, I mean?
That's one of the things we talked with Mike Burke about with Lenovo.
Well, I'm glad you have that agreement with Mike Burke, but
Yeah.
the contract itself, if I'm correct from our attorney, is what's going to govern. And so usually you cannot go outside of the terms of the contract. So an oral agreement between you and Mike is not going to necessarily keep them from coming in and taking it away from our students.
No.
So
We'll take a look at
I'm
that.
just a little concerned about that part.
Sure.
I mean, when I take 741, which is the number that Stan gave me, the 9,000 that you mentioned for 3 through 12, that's $6.6 million that we're obligating ourselves to. If this is what we want to do. So I would prefer going forward, if we're going to do this, let's just make sure that, essentially we're doing 700, or we're doing, 500 computers times $741. So that's what we're really obligating ourselves to tonight, because we're not going to go ahead and buy 500 computers, not buy the learning management software, not buy the filtering software, not buy all these other things. So going forward, I'd like to see it where we're approving all the contracts at the same time that are related to the diploma devices. Otherwise, it's a really heavy paperweight for our students.
And I think I agree with Ms. Parker. These leases, if we enter into contracts, they should all dovetail with each other. You don't want to start a lease on the computer and then your software starts a month later. It's not going to really jive. So, but I guess that's a good point. Mr. Walliver, as far as this 3-year lease, is there something in here that talks about when the lease starts and what the end date is?
3 years from execution is what I recall, but I can dig into that and get back to you. From what I remember, 3 years from execution of the lease.
All right. Can you make sure that is going to be in there? We don't want to give up our computer in April of some school year. We want to make sure we get all the way through the school year.
And if that's the verbal agreement, we can get enough to solidify that part of the lease.
Yeah. I'd like to get some clarification on that. Ms. Powers?
Sure.
I apologize, I stepped out. Ms. Parker, what was your motion? Is it possible? What was your motion?
My motion was just to defer this until next month so we can have it all brought together.
And is the goal so that in a month, some of these questions that you're posing or that have been brought up, we can look at it with full information?
Well, I think that's part of the general discussion. This one specific thing with the lease, I think there's some reluctance of board members to defer this until June, just because our understanding is from staff that it could be a 4 to 6 week lead time from when you do the lease to you actually get the computers. And so we're just thinking, if we do this in June, at the end of June, that's going to really make us tight to have those computers in place for August 1st. So,
Because there's also a lot of prep work. We have to unbox them and stuff like that. Yeah.
all right. So, but I think these are the very good discussion points, and I think hopefully staff is taking notes of the things that the board members, some information, and also to help us with the long range planning. We really need to do that. That's definitely something that needs to be done. All right, so moving on into our agenda, the next item is the facility contract renewals.
So are we gonna?
We'll come back.
Okay, gotcha.
B2. Any discussion or questions on that item? Item B3, food service contract. Questions or discussion? Mr. Breeden, I did have one question on that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, maybe we went over this before, but the bids are kind of blank. It doesn't really tell me like a price per something or a total price. I don't really know what these bids, I don't know what the parameters of these bids are.
These are bids that we actually presented to you last year and you approved, and this is just renewing them. Because
Okay.
we bid it for a longer period than 1 year. Let me see if I've got that information in my folder.
Okay.
And it is, there's several food items on each bid, so it's not a total price, we're bidding this much with this, it's this much for this piece of, it's this much for
It's
this
per,
item.
per gallon of milk.
That's
or
right,
per
or
loaf of
per
bread.
piece of cheese,
Okay.
You know, it's like,
Kinda
some
like
of it
the-
is for cheese pizzas.
Like the
We're using-
gasoline contract that we
Right,
just looked at. Okay.
right. Let me. Well, I apologize, I'm not putting my hands on it.
Are these like some
And
sort
I
of
do
like
not, I do not have that with me.
Are
This
these-
actually renews in August, so
Okay.
if you prefer for us to bring that information back, we can bring that back. But I know there is a long list of food items that fit or under each bid.
Yeah, I just
And we
hate
can-
to.
We can bring that to you.
Maybe it's part of kind of the same discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what what I'm approving, what the prices are or anything on these bids.
And again, you approved it last year. This is approving to renew under the same bid that you approved last year.
Okay. I just hate to set precedent of us approving a bid that doesn't have a price or anything. So I would request to put this off until the June meeting, so we have that information. I don't know if, well, let me see, is anybody, do we do that by common consent, or are there any objections to moving it till June? What's that?
The food service budget was okay, and we're just doing what we did last year, right?
Well, that's what I don't know. I don't know if it's like the same price as it was last year.
It is.
It is?
Yes,
So it's
that's what I'm
complete-
telling you. This is the
it's
exact.
all okay. So
it's exactly what you approved last year. It's just approving or renewing
no
it.
price increase on the commodities or anything like that.
That is my understanding. It is not. That is what Mr. Parkhurst told me. That is exactly the bid that was approved last year. It was a locked-in price.
So we're going to move this to next month. Is that okay? All right. Is that okay with everybody? Any objections? All right. So we're going to move
Sure,
that
we,
till
we
next
we can
month.
bring it
There's
back
no
to you next
objections.
month, because again, this renews August. It's when it's when we renew the contract.
All right, so the next bid, looks like this is more of just almost like a formality to request federal funding. Is that what that is? Let's see, application for IDEA.
Yeah, that one's not mine, so I'll.
Tag up, baby.
I'll
Okay.
yield.
Good evening, Chairman Bates and board members. This is just the formality. You're giving me permission to apply for this money. It is $2,748,718 for students 3 through 21, and it is $81,163 for students 3 through 5. Now, for those of you who haven't been watching the news, as you know, federal budgets have not been approved. There's a lot of controversy with our new education person and our new president. So these are based on my last year's allocations. This may change. And what I've attached in the past, some of you have asked for, well, you're just giving me a dollar amount and you want the budget attached. So what I've attached is where, if this is my allocation, where it will go. It may change a couple thousand plus or minus. Let's just all pray we get federal money.
Okay, so, but this is something we go through this process every year to request this funding.
Exactly.
so-
You say yes, I press the button to apply.
All right, so let me go back. I may have gone a little bit too far since we're now getting into B. All the A items, A1, actually B, excuse me. So we've got B1, B2, and we're going to defer B3. Does anybody want to vote on those B1 or B2 separately? All right, so we're going to vote on each one of those separately. This will be easy. So let's go take up item B1. That's the lease of the computers.
Excuse me.
Yes, Mr. Dudley.
Got a question.
I'm sorry.
What happens if we don't get approved for them?
The only way we would not get approved is if we, somehow misappropriated funding, or if the federal government cuts it. If they cut it totally, the way the law reads now, we're always responsible for students with disabilities and their education. But they would have to repeal the federal law that says that the federal government is going to give us some kind of funding. Right now, the federal law does not give a percentage of what they fund. So in the past 15 to 20 years, it's been about 16% of what the true cost is to the district. That's why I have a general purpose budget that you all looked at, for the last 2 months. And then I have a federal budget. So you would incur these costs if the federal government says, we're going to cut this, until they change the law.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so going back, is there a motion to approve item B1? That's bid number 1776. Got a motion by Mr. Atkinson. Is there a second? All right, got a second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. So Ms. Martin is voting yes.
How would you like to vote? Yes. Okay. All right.
All right, so Mr. Dudley votes yes.
6-1. Yeah. 6-1.
All right, so that motion does pass on a vote of 6-1. Moving on to item B2. Is there a motion to approve that bid? Got a motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Atkinson. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, ready to vote. All right, motion passes on a vote of 7-0. Moving on to our application for the federal funding. Is there a motion to execute and move forward with that application? Got a second by Ms. Parker. A motion by Ms. Parker. Second. Got a second by Mr. Moore. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, ready to vote. Ms. Martin votes yes. Did you hear Ms. Martin? She votes yes. Okay. All right, so that motion does pass on a vote of 7-0. Moving on into finance. Mr. Parliament. First item up, looks like we got a budget memorandum, and I believe this is to give the bonus to our food employees. Is this what this is?
That's correct.
So this
That's
would be
to allocate
amending the
the 150
food service budget.
That's correct.
Which we've already, as a board, we've already approved the bonus.
You approved the bonus for general purpose. This is to give the same bonus to food service.
For some reason, I don't know if I'm dreaming it. I thought we'd already taken that action. Okay, so this should have been on the budget committee report. Okay. So we do have a recommendation from the budget committee to give the same bonus to the food service employees, and I guess we would amend our budget accordingly in order to do that.
I believe that's already included in their
It's
budget.
already in the
Yes.
in the funding. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Is there a motion to approve? Got a motion by Mr. Moore to approve that recommendation. Does not require a second since it did come out of committee. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, ready to vote? All right, so that motion passes on a vote of 7-0. Moving on to budget amendments. Mr. Parliament, you have one set of amendments that, my understanding, I was not present at the last board meeting, but I understand that the board approved making some budget amendments, but those were submitted to the admin committee at the county commission, and they didn't like the format of those, and so they've sent it back to us. And have you since then put it in the correct format?
That's correct.
Okay.
Of the ones that were approved last month, the county commission approved one of those, and that was the $150 raise for
Okay.
all of those employees.
All right, so it is several budget amendments. I guess this had opportunity for discussion at the last meeting, but I'm still going to open the floor to see if there's any additional discussion. All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the budget amendments? And I guess we were just, I don't know if we're approving it or we're approving and resubmitting
Right.
back.
And I
for
guess my
approval.
thought was to take it back to them. They wanted it to come back through the board, and for me to just change forms and get you to sign it wasn't going to work, so we just kind of started all the way back to the approval process.
All right, so motion to approve and resubmit by Mr. Moore. Is there seconds by Mr. Atkinson? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, ready to vote?
A question on one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ms. Parker.
Budget Amendment 4543. It says the amended funds will be used for VACO and Allaview, but we're taking it out of teachers and out of textbooks as I see it.
That's correct.
I guess when VACO came on board, I thought that we had saved money from reductions that were made in personnel, and so that was all going to be covered out of your fiscal services budget. So I'm kind of confused as to why we're taking it out of Mr. Gaines's instruction budget.
Two-part answer to that. Part of this goes back when we were negotiating converting VACO staff as full-time employees, and there would have been a conversion fee to that, and we thought we were moving forward with that. So that's what the 30,000 was for that, or the 35,000 was for that. The other part of it was to cover the Allaview contract that you guys approved. So at the time, that's where we thought we had funds in that line item, so that's where we moved it from.
Okay.
And again, this goes back probably 2 months now.
Right.
when this was written out.
And here's my concern. I voted against the Isle of View, and I've been very adamant that I want money to be spent on textbooks. So to see $30,000 taken out of the textbooks line to pay for financial software that I was told that at the time we got the money for this, we didn't have the money in fiscal services for it, is how I look at it. We
Right.
didn't have the money in software line for it. We're taking it out of our textbooks line. And I'm not really, I don't feel like that's an appropriate place for us to take the money out of.
And probably when you get to the next section of budget amendments, there's probably going to be a lot more money moving around. So I don't have all of those places memorized. So there's probably that textbook money moving around a couple more times. I can't speak directly for that one-to-one.
Right. And I guess Mr. Gaines isn't here tonight, but, I mean, when it comes down to it, I've asked over and over, how much do we spend on textbooks? And when I see that, and Ms. Kinzer has the same problem, when she sees money being taken out of the teacher line to pay for other salaries and things like that, it's just a little disconcerting that we are budgeting for things that, quite frankly, I feel like when we go before the county commission, they want to fund teachers, they want to fund textbooks, and then when we get to this point, we get budget amendments where we're taking money away from our students to pay for something that makes life easier for central office. And that's just not really what my intention is in serving on this board.
Well, and I think we can get into this later on some of the other ones, but I think part of the reason that we're moving a lot of this money around and why it looks the way it looks is because there was some major issues with how budgeting was done in prior years, including the budgeting for this year. So it was not a very accurate process coming up to that point. So to say that we're taking money out of teachers' pockets to pay for something else probably isn't the most accurate statement, because the way that the teacher budgets were built over the last several years was, here's what our budget was, here's what we spent, let's add 3% to it, let's hope we create enough cushion, and they moved forward. This is the first year for the budget that we built for next year, where we built person by person so that we knew what that budget consisted of. So when you see large amounts of money coming out of some of these line items, I don't believe it's taking textbooks out of hands and putting it for software. I believe it's how the budget was developed.
Well, if you look at, and I'll give you another example, Budget Amendment 4551, you're crediting teachers in that, $1.2 million. There's certain line items that are credited for teachers, and then you're debiting out of, substitute teachers, homebound teachers. It's tied to teachers.
Right.
So I don't feel as uncomfortable at that point, because you're still covering things that are associated with teachers. But this other, the one that I mentioned before, is not the case. It's just something that is, and I understand that the budget process the last time may not have been correct, but that's, we rely on, the director. I think it has the responsibility to bring us the budget. So if, as I've said before, if there's fluff in an area,
right,
it's something that he's got to bring to us, because I don't know how many teachers we have. I don't know what the salaries are for everybody. I've got to rely on y'all to bring us the correct figures. And I understand there's going to be some budget amendments, but particularly when it comes to textbooks, I still have never gotten a clear answer on that.
Right.
And so that's where I'm bothered by that. And I'm also bothered by the fact that we voted on Isle of View and we really didn't have the money for it, because that was a concern that I had in the beginning. If we had put it into our budget for next year, then, that could have been built in, but we were budgeting it into this budget year.
Right.
So that's a little different.
Right.
And let me ask you too on one more. Budget Amendment 4554, it says move CTE salary funds to cover overages. What was the issue there, as far as, looks like we're debiting money for about $13,000 for supervisors, educational assistants, things like that?
Just moving it out of the teacher line and spreading it into the other areas. CTE happened to be one of those situations where their budget, they were over budgeted in some line items last year, and no one knows why.
Okay.
And I guess this is going to come up when we start talking about new budget amendments, so I'll go ahead and kind of go through this. When VACO came in December, we were tasked with dealing with a payroll issue. So my crew and myself spent 2.5 months focusing on nothing but payroll at that point. When we got to mid-February, we were finally able to start turning our attention to finances. We didn't know what we were going to find. When we turned over rocks, we didn't know what we were going to see. As we started getting further and further into it, we started seeing where some of the things had not been done. This is prior to the budget season. We were just getting into the budget season at that point. I think in April was the first time we sat down as an executive team and reviewed March financials. It's the first time that some of the executive team actually saw what was in their budget line items because they had no part of it last year. There was one person in the office that compiled all of these budgets. And from my understanding, the finance office would tell people, don't worry about it, I got it covered. So unfortunately, we got to the point 9 months into the year where we actually started digging into some of these line items and trying to figure out where those numbers came from. That's the reason you're seeing all of these budget amendments and large swings from different line items.
Right.
I think it's a cleanup situation that just started a couple of months ago, combined with a budget, trying to build a budget for next year. It's a cleanup situation that's still ongoing. We're not there yet. And as you can see, we've made some discoveries via the budget amendments that we're presenting tonight that are kind of scary, but we are where we are. And we're trying to cover those things to make sure that, number one, we don't overspend, and number two, we don't get audit adjustments. So that's our goal right now, is to do what we can do right now to get us in the best possible shape by June 30th.
Well, for example, with the CTE supervisor where you're debiting $13,000, is that to increase the salary for the CTE supervisor or lower it? I get confused on my accounting there.
I would.
That was where I earned a doctorate,
Mhm.
and the previous person did not account for that.
Okay.
The raise was, well, I say raise, the amount of money that was allotted because I went up on the pay scale because of the doctorate. It was awarded, it was said it was gonna be there, but then the previous person did not actually account for it on that budget line. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
So the raise though for the doctorate, is that consistent with the administrative salary schedule, pay schedule that we have in place? As far as
Yes.
years of service, doctorate, all of that? There's no other career ladder or whatever else? Okay.
Right. I can't speak specifically to that, but I believe it's in line with that salary schedule.
Okay. I think that's all I have on those.
Yeah, and I hope in some ways we don't kill the messenger here tonight, Mr. Parliament. He's who is, has been hired to come in and review all these things, and where he saw that if things were not budgeted correctly, now's the time that we need to do that. If either sometimes I guess some of these things may have been where it was budgeted overall, but it got put in the wrong category. And so if we do not correct that, then there will be an overage in that particular line item, and we'll get an audit finding.
Right.
So some of it's the total amount is there, it's just was not put in the right columns, that sort of thing. Some of it, I guess, is you're finding that some things were maybe over budgeted, and you can't really figure out why that some of those things the numbers were wrong. And some of the things were under budgeted.
We're not budgeted correctly. Right.
And none of us are happy with this. I mean, this is unacceptable, but we've got to deal with it the best that we can. And so this is what most of these, I guess all these amendments are, is trying to make sure that where we're spending money, it's in the proper budget category.
And that's through discussion with the state auditors, and they've kind of let me know where they're going to be focusing on. So that's where a lot of this discussion has come from, and us trying to get us to the best possible point before it's too late. Because we're really down to the wire on being able to get these through.
And I think something to take heart through all this is the process that you did for next year's budget is a completely different process. You started from the ground level up on
That's right.
all those budgets and built from the ground level what those budgets should be. And so going forward, we should be able to rely very well on those financial reports, on those budgets, and we shouldn't have all these. I mean, there's probably going to be still some, at any organization, there's going to be some budget amendments, but we shouldn't have these types of amendments, this process next year.
I mean, there's a saying about budgets, as soon as you pass a budget and approve a budget, it's out of date. And especially with an organization that's close to $100 million in a budget. I think the two key things are the 17-18 budget was not built where one person had knowledge of everything going on. The second part is you've got an executive team now of 8 to 10 people that are very involved in what went into those budgets. And we are now looking at those on a monthly basis. So we won't get to March and see, oh, wow, we've got a $2 million problem here. We're going to start seeing that on a monthly basis and be able
And
to
so
react
the
to that.
responsibility is more distributed now rather than
Precisely.
just one key person.
Right.
If they make an error, nobody ever finds about it until we have a lot of
That's correct.
things to have to deal with. It's now getting segmented out. Well, organizations should be with each department is responsible for their budget and would have to answer to the CFO and the superintendent if they are having issues with staying within their budget. That sort
I
of
believe
thing.
the finance department's responsibility is to oversee that budget, is not to be the sole responsibility of those budgets. So that's what we've done, is pushed it back out.
All right, so we do have a motion, I believe, on the table by Mr. Moore and a second by Mr. Atkinson. Any more discussion on that particular motion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right, that motion does pass on a vote of 7-0. All right, so moving on, Mr. Parliament, you've got some new amendments. And so what we're going to do, we're just going to go through each amendment, and we're going to see if anybody has any questions or concerns or discussion regarding any of these amendments. First amendment up is 4563. And so I'm just going to flip through. Somebody put their light on if they want to have any questions or discussion. 4563, 4564.
Can you explain that one? Because I see a lot of things that says to the Keys account.
That's correct.
We have a Keys account.
The previous finance director, when we closed 15-16, allocated the Keys money that was budgeted for 16-17 into a separate fund balance account, and it was listed as committed. I believe the Keys budget was close to 2.6, 2.7 million. There was actually $2.9 million in there. We don't know why that amount's in there, but there was actually a little bit more in there. Throughout the year, when we started diving down, and this probably started in February, March, when everybody started looking, there was a lot of the Keys dollars that was absorbed into GP and never put against those funds. That's what this budget amendment is doing. It's a final cleanup of what each department identified as what was budgeted as Keys and putting it back there and pulling it out of GP.
So this is actually, when we had a discussion before about there being about $1 million that was earmarked restricted, is this part of that restricted?
No,
or
it's
is
not.
this- Okay.
There's $1 million on our balance sheet that is budgeted or allocated as restricted. And as of the end of the 15-16 audit, the auditor said that $1 million really should be about $6,000. We don't know why that $1 million was restricted. Their suggestion is to just move it back to unassigned fund balance.
They'll let us do that?
Yes.
Okay.
We
Does
just
that
haven't
require a
made
budget amendment?
We just haven't made the journal entry yet. It's still
Okay.
all in fund balance. We just haven't moved it from category to
So
category.
we will be able to access that fund, those
Yes.
funds in the future?
We could access
Okay.
it now if we needed to.
Okay. Why does this one not equal up? as far as, it says, you know, the debit number, I don't know if it says the total is 1.299, and then it says the credit is 1.427.
Looks like there may be a formula error there. We may need to pull that one out and,
Okay.
from a timing standpoint, we may have one more shot at this. From my understanding, the county commission does a final cleanup meeting the last 2 or 3 days of the month of June, so we may have an opportunity to push any other budget amendments through at the June board meeting and then go straight to county commission. I have not confirmed that. I know they're talking about it.
If we need to do a specially called meeting, I think, to get some of these things cleaned up in time, I think we should probably look at doing that. But I don't think that it would be wise for us to take one that's not balanced.
I agree.
So,
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. So if there are no objections, let's pull amendment number 4564. Any objections? And we do that by common consent. All right, so next amendment is 4565.
This was the $150 raise that you guys approved last month.
okay.
I had put it in the wrong account, and the auditor saw that and said, we really need you to move it to other salary and wages instead of fringe benefits, so that's what this one's doing.
Does that affect our budget that we submitted? Because I remember seeing an other fringe benefits line item of about $1 million.
I believe the other fringe benefits line item is where retiree payments are paid out of.
Okay.
And that's why they didn't want that there. They wanted it moved up to the other
Okay.
line item.
So you still think that that line item in the budget would be correct? It's not
Yes.
affected by this?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Let's see. 4566. 4567. 4568. 4569. 4570. Sewing machines? We got sewing machines? So this is just where we sewed some equipment. Right, okay. All right, 4571. 4572. 4573. 4574. 4575. 4576. 4577. 4578. Mr. Parliament, that particular budget amendment, that would actually utilize some unassigned fund balance. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
4579. Ms. Parker?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Going back to that one, I'm still confused by this particular one. And I know that this was brought to our attention, because I've been talking about this pretty much the entire year when we went, because we didn't pay anything in the month of July. And don't we budget based on salaries, not based on 10-month versus 12 months? I mean, the salary is still the same regardless, so I'm not really understanding why we would have a shortage here.
Again, I try to put myself back in the position when this occurred, and the only thing that I can think of, there's two reasons that probably went together to create the situation. The conversion from local government to Skyward during the budget process for this year, and the fact that you were going from paying those 10-month contracts over a 20 pay period and moving that to 24. When we literally discovered this as we were trying to clean up week to 10 days ago for final budget amendments, and we were going line item by line item, and we discovered when we take the budget that was in there for 16-17, it totaled out almost exactly to paying those out over 11 months. The only thing that I can think of was at the time when teachers did not get paid in July of last year, there was 11 months calculated from that point instead of 12, and that's how the budget went in. And again, one person had control of that number.
Has there been any conversation with her about that, possibly?
Not by me, and my understanding is that she's not responded to any conversation since she left.
Well, and I guess what I'm wondering is when I look at your fund balance projection as of 4/30/17, you've got the B2 potential excess revenue from current budget as being 1.991, which is about the same thing as this budget amendment. So I'm just wondering why we're going to have $1.9 million of excess to go into fund balance, but we need to pull it out here.
I think the fund balance calculation, when we started putting that as part of the budget package, we always wanted to asterisk that and say it's a moving target based upon what we know right now.
Right.
And week by week, we're uncovering and finding out different things, so.
But you see what I'm saying? I mean,
Right.
it's almost the same exact amount. And so
Correct.
you're going to have to go before the commission and ask them to pull out 1.9 and say, oops, we goofed, we made a big mistake in our budgeting. And then you're going to turn around and say, but we got $1.9 million that we're putting into our fund balance.
And
So-
basically, this is an insurance policy on what if that 1.9 doesn't roll to fund balance.
Okay.
We decided that it was a much better situation to go ahead and buy the insurance policy and put it in now than to get to that point and overspend a county-approved budget. That would be a much bigger problem, so.
But this is actually going to be paid out is this to be paid out in July?
That's correct.
So it's actually going to be paid out in a different fiscal year.
But we are going to pay that out and book it back into June.
Okay.
So it will be part of the 16-17 budget.
So when you went through at VACO and did your analysis of everybody's why did this not show up then? I mean, because you're looking at salaries, you're looking at what their salary is, you're looking at what they're then paid every month. So I'm just not clear why it's taken until May 25th for it to show up. And that's no disrespect to you. I'm just trying to get a handle as to why this occurred.
Starting on 12/5, knowing that we had a deadline of 12/31, I think the most important thing at that point was, do we have 12 months of
The
pay?
W-2s.
We were just trying to figure out, are our teachers and our employees getting paid correctly? So the focus was totally on calculating that per paycheck, is it correct? Versus looking at it from more of an overall financial standpoint going, are the funds there to cover 12 months versus 11 months versus 10 months? So we were not at the point to be able to look at that point.
And this kind of goes back to what I was talking about before on these budget amendments, where we're taking large chunks out of teachers, large chunks out of like some of these different categories. And now I'm wondering if we should be taking those large chunks out of there because we really need that to pay July, is what it looks like.
But we're
Does that
not
make
taking
sense?
it out, we're just moving it to cover where we think we're going to be based upon those July payrolls. So we're not really taking it out of the budget, we're just basically calculating, these are the teachers that are going to get paid in July that need to be booked back into June. What do we need to cover that? And where are the excesses? We've moved some of the excesses to cover that, and we've identified that approximately 1.9 million is needed to make sure that we've got that covered.
Is that
It's really choosing the lesser of two evils. We don't like to see the 1.9 million coming out of fund balance and covering that, but my recommendation was that's a much better choice than getting to the point where you can't do anything about it.
Is that going to cover just salaries, or will that cover the insurance and the deductions and all those things that are also going to be
The large budget amendment
included?
that you guys went through covered, what we did was we went through each department and rolled everything back up into the 71,100, 116 teachers line, so that that was the line item that we could then make the budget amendment to. So we have corrected everything below that, and that's what that budget amendment is going to go to correct that, or to cover that.
Okay, thank you.
And I think as far as the fund balance projections that we got, that was your calculation as of April 30th.
Correct.
And so probably when you calculated that on April 30th, that.
We were not aware of that when I calculated that.
So that is naturally going to have an adjustment that we're going to have to take a
Right.
look at,
And
and
I
which
think
we'll
it's-
have a much clearer picture after June 30th. We'll know.
Yeah, I'm hoping we're going to postpone doing May financials until all of these budget amendments get in, so that we can see a clear picture of where we're at that point, and then make any adjustments that we can do at that point.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on those budget amendments? All right, again, we've already pulled 4564, and that's moved to next month, or whatever special call meeting if we need to have one. Does anybody want to vote on any of those budget amendments separately, the remaining ones? All right. Seeing no lights, is there a motion to approve, let's see, budget amendments 4563 and 4565 through '79. All right, got a motion by Mr. Dudley, second by Mr. Atkinson. Any discussion on that motion?
I just want to make one other comment.
Yes, and Ms. Johnson, if you can just reflect. So this is budget amendments 4563, comma, and then 4565 through 79. No, 65. Oh, 4565 through 4579. And you can take all that pulled from vote part out. All right, sorry. Miss Parker.
I just wanted to make one last comment on this, because I respect the fact that the auditors are helping us out with this, and obviously we want to do what the auditors say. But the only thing that really bothers me about this is that when this whole issue came up with teacher pay switching from 10-month to 12-month, I had so many teachers that asked me if they were going to get paid in the summer. And I said, no problem, you're going to get paid. And I believe I asked that question in an attorney-client meeting. And I was told, yeah. And for us to have to do a budget amendment at this point is very disappointing to me, because when I say something based on something that I'm told, I expect it to be right, and I expect it to be the correct answer. And if you don't know, tell me you don't know. But I represented to a lot of teachers that were concerned about whether or not they were going to get paid this summer, and I said, do not worry, you're going to get paid. And I'm going to approve this tonight because I want to make sure that they get paid, because I don't want what happened in December to occur again. But again, I want to be able to trust our finances. I want to be able to trust that what I am told I can take to the bank and I can share with teachers, and they do not have to worry about whether or not they're going to get their paycheck. So I hope that this is the end of this mess. And our previous budget person will have been gone for over 6 months here soon. So I don't want to hear that excuse anymore, because we've had plenty of time, I feel like, to get a handle on this. And I understand
our books are messed up, the county commission's books are messed up. I understand it's really a tough job for you guys to have to come in and figure it all out. And so I appreciate the work that you've done. But again, I just want to be able to take what people tell me and take it to the bank, particularly when I represent to teachers that they will get their money in the summer.
And I appreciate that. It is still a work in process. I mean, we are not done. We cannot do a 1.9 million budget amendment and say everything's done. So unfortunately, it is still a process. We've said during many meetings, we cannot wait for July 1st and to be able to wipe the slate clean, because we know what we have in a budget for next year and we know how we've developed it. So unfortunately, we're still living with the sins of the past.
Mr. Moore.
I just want to, can I share some of Ms. Parker's concerns about getting accurate information? But I just do want to be clear. At no time were we not going, I mean, we're going to not pay our teachers. I mean, this is just moving budgeted line items. The money is in the account, and we would have found a way to do it. If I understand this correctly, another way to do this would be to actually go line item by line item and do a really long budget amendment, moving small amounts over, because that's what would be normally happening. So at no time were we at risk of teachers not getting paid.
No,
I think that needs to be very clear.
That's exactly why we're doing this. That's correct.
And so I'm not sure how the rumors got started with that, but again, teachers were and are going to get paid throughout the entire summer as they're supposed to. We're just having to do some cleanup work on the back end for the budget line items.
That's correct.
All right.
Yeah, I think, sometimes I have to go back, and probably Mr. Parliament gets frustrated at me, where I have to get it real. I have to really see the money. The money's always been there, It's just the book, writing it down. It's like your check register and somebody's just not writing things down correctly. So I mean, it is frustrating, and we've got to have reliable information. I do feel like the end is hopefully in sight. I do think that out of this, I do think with it going forward for the 17-18 fiscal year, we're going to have a fantastic budget document to be working with, something that we're going to be able to rely upon. We're going to have to deal with this anymore. But I do think it would be good for us to explore the possibility of hiring an outside audit firm to come in once we get everything cleaned up, and then to have that done just to try to restore confidence of the board, restore confidence of the public that, okay, I know it's been a hard road, but we've got through this and we've got something that's clean, it's good, and I'd like to have somebody independent to be able to come in and put that stamp of approval. That would be nice. Now, I will tell you that I had previously asked the comptroller's staff about that, and the people that I talked to led me to believe that that's something that school boards are not authorized to do. And I thought it was kind of, I don't know, I was scratching my head at that. I have since communicated again to the comptroller's office to see, did I misunderstand that? Is that a possibility? Because I would like to continue to explore that, and that's not to, to me, that's to validate the work that VACO is done, and to validate that we are moving in the right process. And I think I would feel much better as a board member, and I think the public would feel much better. So I would still like us to maybe explore that on the back end of this. Ms. Parker.
I just wanted clarification based on what Mr. Moore said. I was under the impression that you were saying that we really only budgeted for 11 months. Is that right? Because the 12th month is actually being paid in the next fiscal year, but we want to encumber it on this year.
Right.
So we really didn't have the 12th month in there. Is that correct?
That's what we realized a week to 10 days ago. But I think
Right.
from an intent standpoint, the intent was to pay teachers June and July. So
Right. I'm just trying to clarify where I was coming from as far as what we have been told and what the reality is. And moving money around and intent and all that, it's, the bottom line is that's a big mistake. I mean, and, previous director or whoever, that was a big oops that it took us a while to find, but we weren't told about it. And I actually thought that we had been told several times, oh no, we budgeted for 12 months. Oh no, we're just going to encumber that money.
And that's not what happened. And that's the part that I'm frustrated with. So I just wanted to clarify that I didn't make sure I was on the same page with you. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so we do have a motion by Mr. Daly, second by Mr. Atkinson. Any more discussion? Seeing none, ready to vote. All right, that motion does pass on a vote of 7-0. Moving on, we do have some other reports. We have our management summary, our fund balance projection, our GP historical, our revenue report, and expenditure report. So everyone received that prior to today. That's been part of our agenda packet. Does anybody have any questions or discussion regarding any of those reports? All right. Moving on, we do have some just informational items that we can look at. No questions or discussion on those. We will now proceed into an attorney-client conference. They didn't do anything on the Capitol. They said that they wanted to wait until they got more. So I think we're back to, now to announcements. So it looks like we got a quorum. Everybody can see in their agenda the announcements in there. Does anybody have any questions or any additional discussion on that? All right, do we have any announcements or any discussion from any board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, so we got a motion by Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Atkinson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.